welcome to our virtual North Chapel service. I am Ann Marinello, a relatively long-standing member of the North Chapel and a member of the Worship and Music Committee. Today is Sunday, June 27th, and I'm speaking to you from the grounds of Sculpture Fest, our neighbor Pete and Charlotte Davenport's home. This incredible piece stonework that I'm sitting in front of is by Hector Santos, a local artist who also has a piece in the backyard of the North Chapel. Sculpture Fest opens this afternoon, is free, and all are invited to come. Our Reverend Dr. Leon Dunkley is presenting the reflection today, which will be on flexibility. Speaking of flexibility, this is our second to last remote Sunday. Next Sunday, July 4th, will be the last remote Sunday, and then we will move to having outdoor services starting July 11th in our beautiful backyard down by the river. I know many of us will miss the convenience of being able to tune into church service when we feel so inclined, rather than attending at a fixed time on a Sunday morning. But I also know many crave seeing each other in person. I fall into both categories. We have been guided in our practice by opting for providing all that we could of our spiritual service remotely for the safety and the support of not only our church community, but also the larger community. As our state and the local community begin to open up from COVID restrictions, we feel comfortable to begin to do the same. There will be more about this in our upcoming newsletter, but the reality is that we cannot provide both, much as some would like us to do. When we do come together in the backyard of the church, it will not be in the same format as either church as we used to know it, or as in the remote version. Note our topic today, flexibility. Diane, who has created our remote services, will be having some much-deserved time off. The choir is usually off for the summer anyway, so there will not be choir or even singing of hymns, although there will be recorded music for Spirit of Life, which you are encouraged to hum along with. Stay tuned for updates on this. And one other note, as per CDC and revised state guidelines, masks will not be required. Be aware that there may be some who are not able to be vaccinated for medical reasons or may have chosen not to be vaccinated for personal reasons, and please respect each other's choices for masks and personal space. On another front, our permaculture garden is thriving and beautiful. Please stop by if you have a chance to walk through this beautiful space, created with love as an example of using our land to support our earth and its beings, and to encourage conversations about creating sustainable environments. If you wish to help with this project, feel free to join us this coming Wednesday at 11 to weed and mulch and possibly stay for the brown bag lunch in the backyard at noon. Many hands make light work, as my mother used to say. But you don't have to help with the garden to join us for a brown bag lunch down by the river behind the church. Bring your own chair. It's a great way to connect in person with others, and the kids can play in our backyard while you chat. Also, I want to express gratitude to Gina and Mark Oriyama and to George Wogelmuth for reseeding the front lawn of the church last month. We don't know exactly what happened to it, but the large bare patches are gone and the grass is growing in again and green. Also, I hope you'll join our community celebration at North Chapel, scheduled for Sunday, July 11th at 5. It's BYOP, or Bring Your Own Picnic. Pack a blanket or chairs, invite a friend, family member, or neighbor to join you, and gather on our back lawn for a celebration, the evening of our first in-person service in 15 months. And for dessert, we'll be serving ice cream cones and sundaes, not to be missed. Rain date is Sunday, July 18th. Our theme for the month of May has been healing our world. A big goal, but as with any big goal, we can break this down to small, sizable chunks. My world has been turned upside down with all the structural change the pandemic has brought. But having some of that structure fall away has created openings for new thoughts and patterns. I cherish having more time to focus on family and friends and taking care of my own needs as well. I hope you too have that experience, despite the tragedies of the pandemic, the political and the racial crises. Hold fast to what you hold dear. Here is a reading on flexibility to ponder from a blog by someone named Laure, on the virtue of flexibility. Flexibility is the presence of structure in the absence of rigidity, like the valves in my veins that keep my blood flowing in the right direction. As limber beings, we can sway and bend without snapping, even under intense pressure. We are able to return to normal when we call upon our inner strength. Our minds, like muscles, must be consistently stretched and tested to remain pliable, allowing us to become more accepting of ourselves and others. Belated best wishes for Juneteenth, and wishing you all the best this week. And please join us in our opening hymn today, Glory, Glory, Hallelujah.
Hello, my name is Laura Foley. I'm here today on a beautiful June morning in South Pomfret, Vermont, in a field, a recently mown field. And I wanted to read you a poem which is about change, and perhaps we can reflect on what has happened to us over this past year. In what ways have we changed? The poem is set in Madrid. It's about the time that Clara and I finished the Camino and then returned to visit her mother in her apartment in Madrid. And as at this moment, and for this week, Clara is in Spain, is experiencing a reunion, with a post-COVID reunion with her family, and particularly with her 91-year-old mother. A hot day in Madrid. We returned to her mother, same apartment, 6 floors up, Elevator so rickety I walk the unlit stairs. Her husband's old coat hangs in the hallway closet, 40 years past his death. The electric bill's in his name. His watch in her drawer no longer keeps time. The same city grime coats windows, yellowed shades, faded wallpaper. She pours cold water into the old fan, asks for stories of our 40 days walking across Spain, the cathedrals, towns, beaches she remembers, a level of walking her body has long forgotten, the way she has not stayed the same, the ways we have changed. Lorca! Chloe!
Good morning and good Sunday. I hope that this new day finds you well. My name is Leon Dunkley, and I am honored to serve as minister here at North Universalist Chapel Society, or North Chapel, in Woodstock, Vermont. Today is Sunday, June the 27th, and the title of this morning's reflection is The Spiritual Tools of Awakening. The spigot on the side of the house where I live leaks all the time. You can hear the sound throughout the house, the slow flow of water through the pipes. It's nice, actually. It's like having an old friend in the house all the time, but one who you know well enough so that they know where the towels are, one who you know well enough so they make their own coffee in the morning, enough for two. It wouldn't be so nice if I were wasting all that water, and I'm not. The water flows into a bucket that I keep by the garden, and I go out to the garden periodically throughout the day to empty the bucket into the growing flowers and vegetables most of the time. I get there when the water is nearing the top, but sometimes I'm late and the water overflows and I get some pooling around the bottom of the bucket. But it's a beautiful experience to go out to the garden many times a day. I planted too many greens this year, chards of many colors, collards, and a range of lettuces. Last year it was too many tomatoes. I could barely keep up with them. I fried them in the morning and put them over rice. I ate them in the middle of the day. I had them for dinner. I made sauce. It's a lot of tomatoes. They were delicious. 2 nights ago, I went out to pour the water from the bucket into the garden. It was late. It was evening. The sun had set. The sky had darkened. The air was cooling. I went out the front door and I turned to the east and turned the corner of the house, and bam, there it was. The big old moon, almost totally full. It had just come up over the great hills that I call mountains, and it was shining its light over all of God's creation. It was amazing, I thought to myself, that a leaky old spigot and an average garden hose could lead to such a beautiful experience in life. This might sound funny, but hoses fascinate me. They are like convenient, intentional rivers that work for us all the time. My favorite hose is no longer in use. They don't use it anymore. My favorite hose was part of a boat called the Thomas Layton. The Thomas Layton is the large boat that serves Star Island off the coast of Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Layton was a writer and an entrepreneur and a politician, and it's rumored that after he lost his battle on the mainland, he left the country for the Isles of Shoals and stayed there for the rest of his life. He managed an old lighthouse for a while, which is hard for a person with some leg issues. He had some disability in his leg. They say he started an old hotel, but some say that he made most of his money selling liquor to the fishermen. In any case, there's a boat that bears his name out there that has this beautiful hose that pumps fresh water onto the island. For a long time, it was the island's only source of water, the only source of fresh water. It was amazing to think that you could be on an island that was surrounded by water, but still be to be so much in need of it. The water that surrounds the island is salt water, of course, which does not quench our bodies. So the drinking water, the fresh water, came to us from the Thomas Layton. They don't use that anymore. They've created a desalinization process. They pull the salt right out of the water these days. So they don't use that old hose. And sometimes I wonder where it is. If it's still on the Thomas Layton somewhere, which I doubt because they keep the boat up very well. Or if it's in an old boathouse somewhere along the Rocky Coast. Or if it's laying back, this is where my imagination gets a little, has more fun. Whether the hose is laying back in its armchair, enjoying retirement and getting a little fat and a little stiff. Or if my favorite freshwater hose is still nimble somehow, having found a means of staying in shape, having found a way of remaining flexible. How do you do that over time? How does one remain flexible over time? I think that's a good question for David Keene. David Keene has become inflexible. I think that's a good question for me because I've become inflexible too. David Keene, you may have heard this, was just asked to be a graduation speaker out in Nevada way. He presently serves as on the board of directors for the National Rifle Association and has long been associated with that organization. He is steadfast in his thoughts. He was recently asked to become more flexible. He is being asked to change his mind, but I'm concerned. And to be honest, I'm rather doubtful about the possibilities of success. Not because of David's intransience, but because of our own. Perhaps you've heard about this already, but it was recently reported that, and this I quote, parents of the students killed in the 2018 massacre at the Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School have tricked the former president of the National Rifle Association into giving a high school graduation speech defending gun rights in front of 3,044 empty white chairs. One chair for each student who could not graduate this year because they were killed by gun violence. David Keene was told that he was giving a rehearsal speech for the graduating students at the James Madison Academy of Las Vegas, but no such school exists. This is part of what David Keene said. There are some of you who will continue to fight to gut the Second Amendment, but I'd be willing to bet that many of you will also stand up to prevent them from succeeding. The image was so powerful. The pictures that were posted online of the 3,044 empty white chairs perfectly arranged in rows and appropriately distanced, an aisle down the center and carefully centered off to the left and off to the right, running from the front to the back in 3 straight streams. Also, the chairs were cut across transversely for easy access side to side for the needs of these 3,044 graduating students who would not be present that day. The white chairs on the hunter green lawn of the stadium football field somewhere in town, the colors were so stark. There was so much contrast. It was such a visible stunt. And it was artfully done, and it was powerfully done, but it was not a publicity stunt. The organizers were not concerned with notoriety. They weren't selling anything. It was more like a stunt for the heightening of our awareness. They were trying for heightening awareness. It was more like a stunt for the raising of the consciousness of public life. They were going for that because of the losses that they suffered. The loss of a child creates a radical privacy. The losses of the ones we've loved this year or recently create 3,044 sets of radical privacy that are shattered from one another by sorrow. It's hard to come together in our grief. We're still suffering from it, and that suffering is renewed each time it happens again. The article I read online concludes as follows. The stunt was organized by Change the Ref, a group founded by Manuel and Patricia Oliver, whose son, Joaquin, or Guac, was shot dead in the Parkland, Florida massacre of 2018. The stunt that they pulled was spectacularly impressive, no doubt, highly offensive to David Keene, on whom one might say the joke had been played. Now, if David entrenches in the aftermath of this experience, if he becomes inflexible, life may become stuck or more combative. And if we entrench or laugh inappropriately, if we become entrenched, if we become inflexible, the same thing, the same stuckness is likely to happen. I watched about 30 seconds of a video on David Keene recently. It wasn't a research project. I just wanted to see the man speak. I wanted to hear his voice and see his face. What I found was a news segment from 8 years ago. He was delivering a values-based, dispassionate address in Hawaii to what looked like a mostly white audience, but not entirely, of course. And to what looked like an older audience, but not entirely. The voiceover from the news correspondent made his words difficult to understand, but I believe that David Keene was being critical of the way in which guns have become cool in American society. He explained his position. He said, it's about values. It's not about crime. It's not about gun violence. It's not about all of those things. It's about what the Second Amendment represents, which is individual responsibility, freedom, and values that a lot of people don't like anymore. David Keene is defending something. He concluded his remarks as follows. I can tell you that a politician who takes who takes on the country with beliefs that oppose the values of the NRA is in for some rough sledding. And at the end of the day, this person is not going to prevail, no matter how heady he thinks the winds might be, just because he's been reelected. Thank you very much. The video I watched was 8 years old. David Keene was referring to Barack Obama, an American president who, incidentally, was ineffective against the NRA. In January of 2010, 2 years into his presidency, President Barack Obama received a failing grade from the Brady campaign to prevent gun violence. So we have to ask compassionately why David Keene opposes Barack Obama. We have to ask compassionately, and then we have to listen compassionately to what he says. And David Keene has to answer compassionately. This is how we remain a community. Failing this, we forfeit the sympathy that is due when we are made the butt of a joke. We lose the ability to laugh at ourselves. It's hard to think. It's hard to talk to. It's hard to connect with someone whose values are different from my own. I'm sure it's just as hard for them to connect with me. It's easy to fight instead. David Keene is an intelligent man. He is not murderous. He's pro-gun. He is pro-safety. He is pro-freedom as he defines it. He utterly loses the battle in the stunt that was played out in Las Vegas. The inflexibility of the organizers saw to that. This is not a critique. How could any parent who loses a child be expected to do otherwise? David Keene surely knows this, and I don't think he would argue. And this is the impasse. We don't know how to engage with one another on one another's terms. More often, we invent terms for the other person, and we destroy the monster that we create in our own minds. David Keene is not likely to win when he fights with Manuel and Patricia Oliver, and the Olivers are not likely to win when they bring their good case before Congress. Keene's organization fights for the right to carry weapons, and Oliver's organization fights for the rights of 3,044 children not to die. When things become this intractable, I'm reminded of the poem by Rumi, and I take shelter in it. Rumi writes, "Out beyond the ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I will meet you there." When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, and even the phrase "each other" doesn't make any sense. The breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. I'm just waking up myself. I need to wake up, and I need to stretch. I need to visit Rumi's poem. I need to visit Rumi's field and roll around in its grasses and lose myself just a little bit. Our conflicts are just one level of the game. Our personal struggles, our fights with one another. But how these conflicts, these fights, genderize and racialize in our society, how they politicize and how they segregate generations of us, iterations of us, making us intransient, entrenched, and inflexible. It becomes unimaginable for us to see the good way forward. And I realize that I have to learn to stretch again and again. Stretching is supposed to feel good. It's not supposed to be terrifying. Do you like to stretch? My favorite stretching experience happened on Star Island years ago. I was playing ultimate frisbee on the softball field out in front of the hotel. I think it was June. The wind was light that day. The competition was fierce. I was on the team that was playing against Robbie Thayer's team. They were good. Robbie was covering me, which was a bummer because he's a seasoned player. The only thing I had on him was the element of surprise. I couldn't break free from him all day. So at one point, I just took off when he wasn't looking. I started running down the field. I took off without warning, and I was going deep, and I had a few steps on him. And when he noticed, he took off after me, but I had the advantage, and I screamed to my teammate, "Go long!" And my teammate threw the plastic disc almost the full length of the field. I was sure that it was beyond my reach, and Robbie was sure it was beyond his, but neither of us stopped running. We were going for it. I didn't hesitate, not for a second, and Robbie didn't stop chasing me. It was awesome. That moment for me was about the best that sport can offer. We were competing, fiercely competing, pushing each other to greater heights. We were running hard, but the Frisbee was beyond our reach. As its speed began to wane, as it started to fall to the earth, my eyes filled up with hope. As it fell, I took one final step and I leapt into the air. I dove, my whole body outstretched. I was in the air for what felt like 10 seconds, reaching farther, stretching farther than I'd ever stretched before, and a miracle happened. I nabbed the disc, and it was awesome. I fell to the ground, chest first, in a muddy, mighty thump, and Robbie was close behind. He fell down right on top of me. I made the catch, and everyone cheered, no matter which side we were on. I was ecstatic. We were ecstatic until we realized that I was not in the goal. I had fallen down 2 feet short of the mark. It was unfair and anticlimactic, and Robbie exclaimed, "Score!" That's good enough for me. It really doesn't get much better than that. He declared victory for all of us, for the winning side and for the losing side, and we departed the field with honor. No exceptions. I can't remember who won the game. I just remember that I loved trying that hard and stretching that far. It was so sweet. There are so many traditions that require stretching of us. Yoga is a good example, Tai Chi. The positions in Tai Chi are given great names: push hands, sun and moon, black dragon serves tea. Sun and moon is about the opposites of extremes, like summer and winter solstices, the extremity of the sun in June, the extremity of the moon in December. The trick in Tai Chi is holding the tension between opposites. Black dragon serves tea is more complex. It requires stretching. You can't get the stretch without commitment. You have to put your whole self in the game. It's time to put our whole selves in the game. It's time to wake up and stretch a little bit. Waking is what we are called to do. Stretching is what we are called to do, so that we can see the good in one another, so that we can be truly compassionate and kind, so that we can heal ourselves beyond our bitterness, so that we can hold on to one another tenderly, in good times and in tempest, in conflict and in consensus, held whole and honored by a love that knows no bounds. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen.
Fading away like the stars in the morning, losing their light in the glorious sun. Thus would we pass from the earth and its toiling, only remembered for what we have done. Only remembered, only remembered, only remembered for what we have done. Thus would we pass from the earth and its toiling, only remembered for what we have done. have spoken, only the seed that in life we have sown. These shall pass onwards when we are forgotten, only remembered for what we have done. Only remembered, only remembered, only remembered for what we have done. These shall pass onwards when we are forgotten, only remembered for what we have done. Who'll sing the anthem and who'll tell the story? Will the line hold? Will it scatter and run? Shall we at last be united in glory, only remembered for what we have done? Only remembered, only remembered, only remembered for what we have done. Shall we at last be united in glory? Oh,